Okay, I think it's about that time. Probably as ready as we're gonna get. So this morning, as we're continuing down the path of worship in all of its forms, we're reaching some of the less likely worship topics, which I find probably the most interesting because I don't often think about them this way. But today we're going to be talking about fellowship as worship. We're encouraging one another as worship, because the scripture has some things to say about what happens when we're gathered together and about why we should keep doing that. Kind of spoiler alert, we're supposed to do this. This is supposed to be happening. Hopefully that's self-evident at this point. But yeah, today is going to be fellowship as worship. So my first question, as I often do, I want to start with kind of a brainstorm about what our experience is like and why we think we do what we're doing. So why is it important for us to gather together regularly? Joe?
One thing, we don't see each other if we don't make a concerted effort to do so.
Why is that bad?
We lose track of what's going on and who needs what, and who could, lose people who could encourage us.
Brain's clicking a little slow, so my writing's a little slow. So I heard you say for encouragement, and so we don't lose track of what's going on with each other. Why is that important?
We're to pray and encourage each other, and how are we going to do that intelligently if we have no idea what's going on?
Yeah. You can tell when you're not really in touch with somebody's life, when you find out that there's been a crisis, and you have absolutely no idea how to help.
Or even it happened.
Yeah, or that it happened. So, you have that situation where it's like 10 days later, you find out what happened, and you just are like, I'll pray for you. Because you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
You don't know how to help. And so, some of that's legitimate. I'm not trying to criticize us like, oh man, we need to really be nosy and get in each other's business as much as possible. That's not what I'm saying, but we can cut that experience down by being together more regularly and by talking about what's going on. Because we're decent people, so when tragedies happen, we want to be there to help each other. By gathering regularly, that helps reduce those, I want to help, but I don't know how, and I'm not sure how to approach it. It's actually been a while since that thing happened now. I'll just pray for them, or send them a card or something. I'll do my best to let them know that I'm here for them, but they're not going to take advantage of it at this point because it's too far gone, all that. Because I point that out because I think we've all had that experience where we recognize that it's too late to be of any use now, or we find out right as something is breaking and we have no idea how to help because maybe we don't know that person really well enough to understand how to contribute. We might want to bring them food only to find that they've got a fridge full of food because they just had this big, one of their kids had this graduation party and they've got 30-foot-long sandwiches in their fridge. But it's just, we just gotta keep track of what's going on. It's really hard to do that when you don't see each other. Okay, why else? Why else do we gather together? Ted?
They keep your faith strong. Sweet the board.
I'm gonna write build faith,
Yeah.
maybe to build it from scratch, but also when you have it to maintain
Yes,
it.
maintain.
Yeah. Stella?
I guess this kind of goes along with the first one, but as worship, in order to love each other, we have to invest in each other.
Why do we care about loving each other?
We need to.
This is one of the things that I notice about my preaching and teaching. I just take that for granted all the time. I never defend why we should do that. I just assume that we should. So it just kind of struck me that, maybe as we're talking about this, we should understand that. Yeah, God told us to, and maybe there's benefits as well to loving other people.
Yeah. It tends to open up doors for you with them. If they're aware that you have an interest in them and want to be of help, or just say hi every time you see them and ask them sincerely how they're doing, some of those kinds of things just tend to open doors with people who might otherwise not think to even open a door and go through it.
Yeah, I think that that's true. Now, let me ask the stupid question. Why do we want to open doors to help people? Why aren't we just like, I'm doing my thing and you're doing your thing and we can be parallel and that's fine?
It's scriptural again.
I think when you love other people, it also can bring you closer to God, because you can see how God sees them a little bit more. You know, when we interact with each other and love each other, I mean, I feel like that's why God told us to do that, is because we could see how He loves us as well. You know?
We get little tastes of how God loves us when we are loved by others and when we love others. Yeah, I think all of that is good because of reasons that we all take for granted. It is better to be that way. It is just better. John?
Also, I think it gives people courage to ask for help when they need it, if they know that we love them and are interested in their life, at least to the point, you know, of talking to them occasionally, or, you know, the more fellowship we have together, hopefully, the better we know each other. And it's much easier to ask for help if you know someone is not going to say no.
Yeah, all these other things as well. Yeah, John?
I like to call it my weekly recharge. It's awful nice that you're spending time out in the world, getting beat on from all sides about worldly things, actually come back into an area where you're with like-minded people, and basically, okay, you get yourself back to being centered again. This is what we're here for. It's not hard to get distracted. It's also easy to get distracted and off course, away from here.
Yeah, that one resonates with me. Ted?
Help, but keep your strength and health up, because if you walk in the house and do anything, you tend to be more sicker than if you're being around fellow people like yourself and like love and everything else.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in a word. I'm just gonna call that socializing. I think I spelled that right. No, I'm not sure because it looks wrong. We're social people. Being social, having an opportunity to be social is good. Sharon?
You can see others' good works and glorify God. Like every time I'm around Tom and Ruth Ann, I see that they're going about doing this. I see Ron's mowing. It just encourages me to see them doing that, and it makes you want to do more.
Inspiration.
Good transition. Fellowship as worship. In what ways are we worshiping? One of the ways that we worship is by being inspired by the good deeds of others to then go and do good deeds ourselves. Why is that good? Romans 12. Our act of worship, the act of worship that God desires, is for us to live our lives as worship, as an offering. Our lives, the way that we live in our day-to-day and the decisions that we make, glorify God when God is the center of those decisions. And by extension, when we make other people valuable, when we minister to their needs, when we encourage them, when we receive encouragement from them, offering our bodies as living sacrifices, as it says in Romans 12, is really difficult to accomplish without gathering together regularly. Because we need to be encouraged by what others are doing, not just for creativity so that we can see, oh, that's an interesting way to minister to those people or this community or this group or something, but also so that we can see there are others who are trying, so that, as John said, when we get discouraged by being beat down by the world, we don't give up. Because it's easy to want to give up, because the world is hard and difficult. And so we worship by gathering as a means of facilitating future worship, certainly, and we gather so that we can worship through song and some of these other things we talked about, worship through giving and all that. Gathering facilitates that, but the act of fellowship itself is, in and of itself, worship as well. The 9:30 to 9:45 fellowship time that we've built into Sunday school, which is, it's neither here nor there, it's kind of become really informal and sort of fallen apart a little bit, but that time was designed as worship, so that we can be an encouragement to one another. We show up at 9:30 so that we can talk to each other, because you don't have a lot of opportunity to talk right now amongst yourselves, because, I have the microphone, as I'm fond of saying. There's not a lot of catching up that you're doing right now, so that first 15 minutes is for that purpose. And by fellowshipping with one another, you are worshiping both to facilitate future worship, but then also the question that is more curious to me is that act in and of itself, I think, can be described as worship. And I'm just curious, in what way? What is it about the actual gathering in that moment that is worship? I think we've done a good job talking about the positive effects after. But what about the during?
For one thing, we're more focused, I think, just like in the small groups. We may not be doing a formal Bible study or anything, and we are socializing and exchanging information, but we are also focalized.
Coining a new term. That's all right, you can do
That's a
that.
weird word.
Yeah,
Sounds right to me.
Anyway, we. Quiet.
I'm glad that always work with Ron.
Yeah. Making new words like that's good.
We tend to focus more on spiritual things. And we can pick up on things in a group like that and be open, knowing that if it's something that we really would rather not have spread out through the rest of the congregation or out into the world, that in those small groups, it's like they say about Las Vegas, what happened there stays there.
In a different way, maybe.
Definitely
Yeah.
in a different way.
But yeah, same idea. Yeah, there's something about knowing we'll spend eternity with each other that sets our minds in a better direction. And as we talked about worship, there's a lot more to worship than articulation, saying the words or singing the words. Heidi and Jeff did a good job taking us through worship through song and showing how it's more than just saying the right things at the right times or something. It's about dispositions and attitudes and intentions and motives. And when we are gathered together, we can be worshipful by caring about one another. It's something that's honoring to God, and we honor God by doing it and by making the effort to make it a priority. You brought up something interesting. I hadn't intended to talk about that this way, but this is in my mind, so I'm going to do it. We end up with, just sociologically speaking, this is how you end up developing relationships in general anyway, but at the church in particular, you kind of have like an inner circle or a closer group of people who know the most about you and who you know the most about. Like maybe a small group, maybe it's even a little bit tighter than that sometimes. You've got confidants and people that you trust and who trust you. And you're encouraged by them in a different way than you are encouraged by these other people who are just a little bit further away. They don't know that so-and-so's sisters, brothers, nephews, dog's cousin is struggling with illness. They don't know that, but these people do, but these people don't. But they know enough about you, where you work, kind of generally where you live, how many kids you've got. They know you pretty well. And then we got like another ring out where they know your name and they'll greet you and they're happy to see you, but you've never barbecued together or anything. We're just here together at the same church as the body, and we coexist side by side. And there's some of you who know of each other but don't know each other super well. And all three of these are contributing something really useful and meaningful to your encouragement, to your worship. You can be encouraged by somebody who sits way across the sanctuary, whose name you're pretty sure is this, but you're not positive because you don't talk a whole lot. And over time, hopefully more people get pulled toward the center. But this whole experience of having people who are really close, pretty close, and then they're just over there, they all encourage you in a different way. That person who sits over there, who's a relative stranger, who maybe they haven't been coming to the church that long, and you've been here for, 42 years? They can be an encouragement to you because you see they are loving and worshiping the same God I am in the same place at the same time, and they value what I value. And you've got different, you know, it's not a smorgasbord where you take your pick and you leave everything else behind. That's not what I'm saying. Just that everyone is offering something to everyone else, even if you're in these more outer fringes where you're not all that connected to each other. We're connected by the thing that matters. And we're connected by a really particular thing in that we're all worshiping here, in this place, at this time. And I think that's worshipful. Not just the literal act of worshiping through song, but being together and being encouraged by one another.
Wow.
Okay, Hebrews 10. Please turn to Hebrews chapter 10. Okay, can somebody read Hebrews chapter 10, verses 23 through 25?
Let's hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And let's consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembling together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near.
Okay, why do we gather?
Share Jesus. Spur one another on.
Spur one another on.
Encourage. Oh, that's what Jesus said. When two or more are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them. We gather to share Jesus.
I was wondering if that might come up. We'll go to that one next. I wrote that down just in case that one came up, but we'll go to that one in just a minute. Little fun story about Eric. It's something that will give you a little background about me too. Eric graduated from Great Lakes 2 years before me. We actually overlapped there by 3 years. And they do a senior sermon where the seniors have an opportunity in chapel to do a sermon and just share something with the body before they leave and they get some practice and stuff. And Eric's senior sermon was on this passage, and he coined this phrase, spurious encouragement. Because you think about spurring one another on towards good deeds, and you think about what that is. What's a spur and how is it used?
It's a goad.
What's a goad?
Poker.
A poker that is sharp and it hurts you so that it tells you which direction to go. Right? You see the cowboy spurs, you know what I'm talking about? They got the little spinny disc that's bladed on the back end so that they can jam it into the horse so that the horse can run fast. That is the nature of the encouragement that we get from one another. A little bit of uncomfortable prodding in the direction that we're supposed to go. Spurious encouragement. That was really funny. That went over like a lead balloon with a bunch of college students. Because they just, you know, that's not the world that college students live in. That's just they live in a different place at that phase of their life. But that's Eric. We gather together to push each other too. And that's something I think probably many of you meant when you were sharing these things too, but I think it needs to get isolated and said too. We aren't just gathered together for some kind of passive encouragement that we receive from others who are around us or in our proximity who share similar thoughts, and so we like them, or they make us feel good. There is a sense in which we gather together in order to receive correction. We receive spiritual stimulation through discussion like this, or through sermon times, or through conversations you have in the halls. And we are being goaded or spurred toward an objective. And the objective is stated in the text. What is the objective? Not rhetorical, even though that sounded rhetorical. What is the objective? Yeah. Which result from holding fast to our hope. Our hope results in good deeds. And when hope starts to fade, we have people there to spur us on in hope and towards good deeds. And these things are all connected. And I submit to you, the reason that we need to be together is because it is too hard to do alone. Our God is a God of community, like 3 in 1. He created us to need community. It wasn't good for a person to be alone. He created another person so that they could be in relationship, right? This is very beginning, that's how this all started. And so we spur each other on toward good deeds, because without that, we would fail, we would falter. Some of you are really strong and you could make it for a while, but if you trekked out on your own, you would not make it forever. And that's what we're after. Help and encouragement so that we can survive the difficulty that is just living. Ted?
Kind of like, last week was a 12-month meeting. And like I said, I was new at this and I'm going to get stronger, but I look towards like you, Ron, Joan, and they inspire me to get stronger and learn more. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about.
That's one clear though.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you were left out in the rain, like let's say you had a conversion experience and you're like, I want to follow Jesus now. And we were like, good luck with that, right? Or we just kind of push you out the door. How are you going to learn? Where are you going to go? And you read the Bible, but sometimes it doesn't always make sense when you're just reading it and you're like, what am I reading here?
Yeah.
And there's, we're all supposed to be able to help each other with that. And I'm hoping that that's working for you. I've kind of put you on the spot now. You kind of have to say that.
Yeah, well, I kind of,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. That's an example of what we're talking about. And it goes both ways too. I'm going to speak for myself, Ron, and Joan. We're encouraged by you. You being here and your excitement, your enthusiasm, and the changes we've seen in your life. It goes both ways.
Okay.
Joe?
You were talking about being out on your own. I was thinking about Elijah. And when he thought he was the only one left, what that did to him, it sent him out. He just went out to sit under a tree and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
And here was this great man of God, and he just, thinking that he was alone, it was just more than he really could bear.
Yeah. Yeah. No single person should bear all of the weight of doing Christianity. I don't know how that sentence finishes well, but it's too much. It's too big. We need help. We need each other. Absolutely. I wasn't sure if this was going to come up, but since it did, we're going to go there. Matthew 18, verse 20. Need to back up just a little bit. Actually, we're going to read the whole chapter. Let me read this for us. We're going to go back to verse 15. If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. If the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you, while NRSV. Let that person be as a Gentile or a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if 2 of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by your Father in heaven. Or by my Father in heaven, excuse me. For where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I am there among them. So I want to both encourage you with this passage and caution you with this passage. For the most part, this is not talking about you. I just want to make that clear. The 2 or 3 that are gathered, this has so often, in my experiences with different types of folks in seminary and in other places, they think that if I just get together with somebody in the coffee shop who also is a Christian, then I'm doing church. That's not what this is saying. 2 or 3 are gathered. He was talking to his apostles, of which there were 12, who were responsible for conflict resolution in the church body. And so this should be encouraging to you so that you know that when leaderships gather together and make decisions about church discipline or make decisions about the vision and direction of the church or fill in the blank, God is present in those conversations and is guiding where they go. That's the promise. Not that sitting in the coffee shop Jesus is in the open chair, and we should pull a chair out with him, with us. Because we're talking about conflict resolution and church discipline. If the idea was just that being together as two was all it took in order to bring Jesus there, then every married couple ever could do Christianity completely alone. Right, so I want to caution you with this so that this doesn't become a catch-all for you to be able to justify anything that you're doing. But I also want to encourage you with it to say that you can trust leaderships at churches. Okay, thoughts or questions? Recognize that might be the first time some of you have heard that perspective.
I think that's one of the scriptures that are taken out of context frequently. God says when two or three are together, then, whatever we ask, we'll do. And that doesn't mean that you can gather two of your Christian friends together and ask them to do something for you. You could ask, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's probably, as you've said, that's probably not even what's in view here. Because what's being talked about is whether or not a person is going to be removed from the assembly. Just average Joe's us, we should not have that authority. When two or three are gathered in God's name and they decide that it's time for this person to be handed over to Satan because they are an unrepentant sinner and they're doing damage to the body, the leaders can make that decision with the full authority and weight of God behind them, because God has promised to be present with the leadership when they make a decision to remove someone from the assembly. Are you tracking with me? That's why reading that first part becomes really important. Because otherwise, without that first part, as Joan pointed out, we end up with a really strange promise about how, like me and Eric Eldred back there get together on the golf course and we pray that we get hole-in-ones on every hole. And we have an expectation that it's going to happen because two are gathered, Jesus is here, and when we make a decision, God has to honor it. That's weird. We recognize that's weird, but you could insert any number of other possible examples that are a little bit less selfish, and then you see things that get done at churches regularly. And we're talking about the weighty, difficult decision to decide whether or not this person is doing so much damage to the body that they need to be removed from it. And God has placed full authority behind the leadership to make that decision. And then I'd also add the caveat, treating them like a Gentile or a tax collector means they now become a target for evangelism, not ostracized scumbag that we hate and gossip about. Or treating them like a Gentile or a tax collector means they need Jesus, and we show them the love of Christ exponentially and more as much as we were already trying to do. They just can't participate in the assembly because their sin is hurting too many people. I'm actually kind of glad that this came up because fellowship as worship is a big deal, because somebody might come in here and their sin issues might be so severe and they might be so unrepentant that they are preventing that from happening. Now what? Now the leaders have the unenviable task of meting out discipline. That sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. Good luck, Ron.
2 Rons, don't
We don't need more Rons.
You don't need more Rons.
Okay, any thoughts or questions on that? Okay, the door is not open, or the door is open, it's not closed. No, we're moving on that conversation, okay? Come talk to me if that was weird, or if you think I'm wrong or something, that's okay. If you just don't want to embarrass me in front of everyone and you want to talk to me later, that's okay. All right, come talk to me, we'll talk about it. Laura,
But that right there is an example of worship.
what's that?
That was something that I hadn't heard before, the way that you described it. So by being here, getting together in worship,
meeting together as a congregation, you learn from each other, you learn more, and that's worship.
Yeah, I totally agree.
If you're interested enough to get up an hour early and come to Sunday school to us church, if you were interested in learning and encouraging somebody else. And you don't know who you're encouraging.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's what I like about that circle. The person on the very outermost edge of that circle might be the person who encourages you the most somehow.
Or
And they
the
don't
person
know.
you encourage, when our boys were young, and my husband worked third shift for a while, he didn't always make it to church on Sunday morning. He tried, but some mornings he just had to go, had to go to bed. And I would take the 4 boys to church by myself, and then we'd all go in the evening. And I don't know, it was years later, this lady came up to me and she said, "You're the one who got me to come every Sunday. I would see you there by yourself with those 4 boys and think, if she can do that, I can get here."
She can handle John. No, absolutely.
But you just don't know. Just the fact that they see you every time, if they're only coming 2 or 3 times, every couple months, and every time they come, you're there, it's an encouragement.
Yeah, which is one of the things I didn't touch on much in the Hebrews 10 passage. Don't give up the habit of meeting together.
Right.
There are too many benefits. And there's really no downside. The very, very small amount of discipline it takes to give up a couple hours on Sunday morning is worth way more than you'd ever gain by not doing it. Yeah. Okay, Ephesians 5. We'll move somewhat quickly through this one. This one is relevant. I actually mostly want to read it so that I can make a joke. So, Ephesians 5. Wow. Hopefully my sense of humor is encouraging to you.
Yeah.
And not discouraging. Somebody read Ephesians 5, verses 15 through 20.
Be very careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the Lord's will is. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit. Speak to one another with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Sing and make music in your heart to the Lord, always giving thanks to God the Father for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but us gathering together and enjoying each other's company is a direct substitute for getting drunk. Am I reading that right? Like, instead of going out
Instead of going out,
and
yeah.
getting drunk,
Yeah.
we are filled with the Spirit and encouraged by one another with songs, hymns, and spiritual songs.
It is cheaper.
That's a good point. So what we're doing here, or what we do in small groups, is supposed to have a similar effect, or fill the void that getting drunk is trying to fill in your life. Right? We are gathering together in order to be overly joyous, lower our inhibitions, and enjoy each other's company, which is what you're attempting to do when you get drunk most of the time. Am I way off base here? Is that kind of the argument that he's making? You shouldn't need to get drunk. You've got all these goofy people to hang out with. Right? Like this, that's what, and this church does laugh a lot. I appreciate that because I make terrible jokes. I really need you all to laugh at them. Was that too real, John, too real. But that's, and I'm kind of jesting, I brought this up so that I can make a joke about us basically being drunk when we're hanging out together. But that's I think, the parallel, the closest parallel that the world has to what we do. They have to go and use chemicals in order to induce the state that us just being together creates. Because we're joy-filled people.
That we're filled with the Spirit and Alcohol is also called a spirit.
Yeah, I like the English puns. I don't think that's necessarily the pun he was hoping to make, but yeah, we get the spirit, they have spirits, and they're kind of trying to manufacture that. But yeah, I do think that the most direct correlative between the joy that you see expressed through worship on Sunday morning with people gathered together of like mind is a drunken kegger. Those people are being crazy together and having fun and trying to enjoy each other's company. They're being reckless and dangerous, right, which is not something we really value as a group. We prefer safety and security typically. But we have gathered together and we are just enjoying each other's company. And we lower our inhibitions and we laugh and we joke and we tell stories, and that's how it's supposed to be. The most similar thing out there in the world is drunkenness to our joy. They try and manufacture it, but it's not the same, because we're filled with the Spirit. Okay.
Hey Todd?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, think about what happens afterwards too. If we get together, what happens the next day? I mean, you could feel really bad and filled with a headache and a hangover and regret, or you could be filled with even still with the encouragement that you have being together and just sharing each other's lives.
Yeah, our hangover is having enough energy and encouragement to make it to the next Sunday. That's how we get hungover. We come away from a joyous celebration, like church picnic coming up soon, right? We come away from that, and our hangover is, I can make it. Life is hard, but I can make it. Because those people are in this with me. You know, that'll preach somewhere in there. I'm sure there's a sermon illustration. Okay, 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Chapter 5. I'm going to go ahead and read this one, 11 verses. Now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers and sisters, you do not need to have anything written to you, for you yourselves know very well that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. When they say, there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and there will be no escape. But you, beloved, are not in darkness, for that day... I'm really struggling with the New Revised Standard this morning. I don't know what my problem is. But you, beloved, are not in darkness, for that day to surprise you like a thief. Weird. For you are all children of light and children of the day. We are not of the night or of darkness. So then let us not fall asleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober. For those who sleep, sleep at night. For those who are drunk, get drunk at night. But since we belong to the day, let us be sober and put on the breastplate of faith and love, for a helmet, the hope of salvation. For God has destined us not for wrath, but for obtaining salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ, who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we may live with him. Therefore, encourage one another and build each other up, as indeed you are doing. Okay, metaphor on metaphor on metaphor that gets a little bit fuzzy, so let me try and sift this out a little bit, and then make a point. The day of the Lord is Jesus' return. This is not what the great and terrible day of the Lord meant necessarily in the Old Testament, but through the perfect revelation of Jesus and his character, we've come to understand the day of the Lord is a different kind of judgment than we thought it was going to be. A spiritual judgment where we're raised to a resurrection instead of an earthly judgment where our enemies get punished. I'm not going to write to you about dates and times because no one knows when it's going to happen. We live a lifestyle of readiness. So the initial kind of givens, and then it goes on to argue for them. We're not surprised because we are perpetually prepared for the coming of Jesus. The first metaphor is we exist in the daytime, which is the time when you can see things. At night, you can't see things because it's dark. So thieves break in at night. During the day, thieves don't really break in because they would get spotted breaking into your house or running away. And we are people who live as though it's daytime all the time. We recognize the potential of Jesus' return, and we're watching for it as though it's day. But we're not going to be able to see it because it will happen like a thief in the night. It will just all of a sudden be here, and we'll go, good thing I was ready for that, because I was not able to predict when that was going to come. The second metaphor, you know what else happens at night? People get drunk. So let me try and make this connection. This is me speaking on behalf of the author. Don't be drunk, because drunkenness represents a lack of readiness. So the same way that you can't see what's going on at night, you live as people who are alive during the day, or awake during the day. And whether you're awake or you're asleep, at least you're not drunk, because then you're not ready at all. And regardless of the state that God finds you in when Jesus returns, you're going to be okay, because you have received the salvation that was promised to you by God. But you should be ready, right? So, metaphors all over the place. We circle back around. Be careful to be ready. Be ready as though it's daytime so you can see. Be ready as though you're sober so that you don't stumble when you're running toward it or whatever. And then we get to the end, and the point is, encourage one another and build up each other, which is what I see you doing. So the act of worship, one of the acts of worship that we are achieving or performing by gathering together is preparing for the inevitable end. For us, I would think it's pretty likely that the inevitable end is our personal passing away. I don't think that Jesus is going to come within our lifetime. I would love to be surprised by that and be wrong. That would be great. I'm ready and living as though that could or will happen. But I do think that I'm going to live all the way out and probably die of natural causes. And then we'll be looking forward to resurrection later. That's just my personal opinion. If you all are like, I'm convinced it's coming, great. Let that motivate you to good deeds. That's great. And again, like, we don't care about when you think the day of the Lord is going to be. Just that you live out a Christian character. Just as he says, no one knows when it's coming, so just be cool and live together, right? So that is the last act of worship I think that we perform together by fellowship. We are prepared. We are ready. Not because we assume that Jesus will come on a Sunday morning when we're gathered together, but by gathering together, we are prepared and ready when he comes at 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. Because we're encouraging each other, we're ready. Okay, lots of fuzzy metaphors, but I didn't want to not read that scripture if this is what we're talking about, because I think it's too on point. Done.
It's kind of like that song by 21 Pilots that you played, where that guy talks about how somebody stole his car radio, and he starts thinking, to have faith is to be awake, and to me, that's something they teach us to have faith and to be awake.
Yeah, because it's a powerful metaphor, right? Because it would be easy to just be asleep and not really care about what's going on, or to be drunk and just stumble through and
Well, yeah, because also when you're drunk, you get very, very hazy.
How do you know that? No, I'm just kidding. Not cool.
TMI.
Yeah, so, okay, does that make sense? So I didn't leave myself enough time, but questions that I want you to think about and then get back to me through email or phone calls or something. Are you actually encouraged by our gathering? Our actual gathering. Not the theory, not the theoretical bullseye, not the theoretical what's supposed to be happening. Is what we described here actually happening? If it's not, send me an email, give me a phone call. Come talk to me about your experience, about what is lacking, about what could be done more or better, about what things we could change so that this is happening. This is what we are trying to accomplish. And if we occasionally don't stop and say, are we actually accomplishing this? I think we do a disservice to all of you and to us, to everyone. If we are not meeting our goal of encouraging each other towards good deeds and preparing for the coming of Jesus, we need to change. I don't know what that change looks like. You don't have to know what it looks like either in order to confess that you are not getting this. So if you're not, tell me. Or run if you're more comfortable or something. But we'll figure it out. We'll work on it.
Which Ron?
Which Ron?
Yeah.
Not the more Ron. That Ron. You started something now. I like that.
Trust me, you didn't start it.
I like
It's going on for a while.
And then also, for those who, I had a few other questions, but I'm just going to have you take away two. Is this working? And for those who are in small groups, are your small groups working? And if not, send me an email, send me a phone call, Facebook message, whatever. Or if you want to join a small group and you're having trouble doing that, send me Facebook, email, whatever, and we'll figure that out. Okay? That's kind of our practical step after we've done some head stuff. Let's get it transition to the hands. So be thinking about that. Is it working? And if it's not, I want it to work. So tell me. Okay, thank you.